Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for another edition of Game Changers TV. My name is Shay Dixon, and I'm here with District Attorney Darius Pattillo. How are you today?
I'm doing great, thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So, tell me, what does the District Attorney's Office do besides keep everyone safe?
Well, we do a lot of things here at the DA's office. First of all, we're an office full of lawyers, but we have a full staff that's dedicated to serving the people of Henry County. The first thing we do is make sure that we are representing the people in court. Our job is to hold people accountable who commit crimes in our community. Those crimes specifically are felony crimes, so that's all the big crimes like murders, rapes, armed robberies, child molestations, drug trafficking, etc., burglaries. Any of those cases fall under the jurisdiction of the district attorney. So our job is to make sure that people who are accused of those things, if we have the evidence, to prove them in court.
Wonderful. So tell us about you. Where did you go to school? Kind of how did you become the district attorney?
Well, I'm originally from Atlanta, Georgia, southwest Atlanta. I went to Thurl High School, which is an Atlanta public school, and I went to the University of Georgia after that, where I majored in social studies, education, and I had an emphasis in political science. And I also stayed there at UGA for law school. And after getting out of law school, I did a little work in private practice, doing some commercial litigation. But for the most of my career, I've been a prosecutor. I spent about 14 years in DeKalb County as an assistant district attorney, where I prosecuted all major felonies. I was also in a supervisory role there for some time, and I headed up our juvenile division for some time over there. So I had a lot of experience before I ran for DA. I ran the first time in 2012, and I came up a little short, came close, but came up a little short, and I ran again in 2016, and it worked out. So I've been in office now for one term, and glad to know that the people are giving us good response to what we've done in the office. Because in addition to those traditional things we talked about, we do a lot of different things in the DA's office. We are also concerned about preventing crime before it happens. And so one of the things that we've done is start a youth program in our schools, middle schools specifically, where we go into schools and we teach an entire curriculum. It's called Power Moves. The reason it's called Power Moves is because we go in and we try to educate young people on how to make good decisions. We teach them different lessons every week about how to resolve conflict, how to solve problems, how to avoid gangs, drugs, and violence. We talk to them about police-citizen encounters and what you should do if you have an encounter with a police officer, and just to how to make good strategic decisions, even as basic as who are you hanging out with, who your friends are, deciding to do your homework, schoolwork, your chores at home. All those things we find are important to make sure that kids stay in school, because what we know is when kids stay in school, they're not out committing crimes. And so I think that's important, and that's why we started that initiative.
Wonderful. So, your passion for the youth, where did that come from? Were you always passionate about helping young people?
I've always been passionate about helping young people. Maybe that's because I grew up in a situation that had a fair amount of negativity in terms of drugs and violence, quite frankly. And I was one of those kids who was labeled at risk.
Right.
But I had things in my community that helped me. In addition to my parents, I had good community coaches, teachers. I played basketball at my local YMCA. I was involved in a youth outreach program there. And through those mentorship relationships, it helped me get out of my situation and get educated and go to college and that type of thing. So I always wanted to pay that forward. Even when I was in undergraduate school, I would go over to the housing projects and help tutor young kids when I was a young college student. So it's always been a part of who I am.
Right. So you spoke earlier about taking a different type of approach, right? So keeping the people safe, but allowing others to have a second chance. Can you kind of explain how that works and your mindset behind that?
Sure. At the Henry County DA's office, we recognize that everybody is not a lifelong criminal.
Right.
You know, we understand that young people make bad choices.
They do.
And we believe that people who make nonviolent choices that are against the law, that they shouldn't have to live with a felony on their record if it's something that they can be redeemed from. And so we created a pretrial diversion program when I took office that allows youthful nonviolent first-time offenders to have a second chance at life once they're done with their probated sentences and have done everything they're supposed to do, so that they can take care of themselves and their families and not grow up to be repeat offenders.
Okay, so that pre-trial diversion program, what are some of the things that these young people that are getting a second chance kind of have to do in order to get through the program?
With a number of requirements. So that's important because we do believe in holding people accountable. In order to get this second chance, they actually have to do something.
Right.
A lot of times it's doing community service. Sometimes they have to have certain types of counseling, sometimes anger management. Sometimes they have to pay restitution if a victim is out of pocket expenses. So there's a number of things that they have to do. But most importantly, they have to stay out of trouble.
Right.
If they get in more trouble while in the program, then we can always bring the case back and prosecute it in a traditional way.
Wow. So that definitely pushes our young people, stay the course, take the second chance, and don't get in trouble or reoffend. So I really like that second chance approach. So back to the Power Moves initiative. When you initially started that, were you in just a few of the middle schools? Are you in all of the schools in the county? Is it just Henry County? Kind of tell me more about that.
Sure. So initially, I decided to just do this pilot program in one school because this, as far as I knew, had never been done before.
Right.
What I wanted to do was start a curriculum so that we can have a consistent presence at the middle schools. And the reason we chose middle schools is because we wanted to catch these young people before they got to high school. Because we know a lot of kids, they stumble off the blocks in ninth grade.
Right.
And so I want to start with 7th and 8th graders before they even got to high school so they can go equipped to make good decisions. And initially I said, let's just start at one middle school, and we were going to start at McDonough Middle School just to see how it goes. But then we thought about it, we planned and we prepped, and we said, well, we want to touch more than just the south side of the county. Let's touch two sides of the county, the north side as well. So our first year we started with Stockbridge Middle School and also McDonough Middle School. And our second year, this year, we actually added Eagles Landing Middle School. And I'm happy to say that we're going to be expanding next year and adding 2 more schools.
Wow.
We're going to add Austin Road Middle School as well as Woodland Middle School.
Okay. So are you working mostly with young men, or are you working with young ladies as well in middle school?
It's boys and girls.
So are you planning on expanding the program to other middle schools in Henry County?
Yes, right now we're at 3 schools.
Okay.
We're at McDonough Middle School, we're at Stockbridge Middle School, as well as Eagles Landing Middle School. And we have great relationships over there. They have great principals, great staff, great faculty. They got great kids. Next year we are expanding to 5 schools. We're going to also add Austin Road Middle School and Hampton Middle School next year.
Wonderful.
My goal is to, at some point, be able to be in all the middle schools in the county, which is around 10 or so schools. That's my ultimate goal at some point, but of course we will have to have the resources to be able to do that, and we want to make sure that we're growing in a responsible way so that we are being effective wherever we are. And we just appreciate the schools for supporting us and encouraging us to be a part of their partnership over there.
You're going into your second term of service. Are you expanding your current initiatives, or do you have new initiatives? Because I understand that in your first 6 months in office, you completed most of your initiatives. Is that correct?
Yes, very much so. So we want to expand on what we've done. We want to fine-tune the things that we've done. One thing we didn't talk about is that we started a Crimes Against Children unit in the DA's office and domestic violence unit. And what that is a unit that specializes in protecting young people who have been abused or mistreated under the law. And we started that unit. That unit didn't exist before our administration. And we'd like to expand that. Right now it has 2 attorneys and 2 investigators in that unit and a paralegal, but we want to expand that to make sure that we're providing as much service as we can to the most vulnerable people in our community. We also started a homicide and gang unit. We'd like to expand that in the second term. I'm also looking to do a record restriction event at some point in the second term. So we're researching that now and trying to see who would be eligible for something like that in nonviolent cases, cases that were dismissed, but those charges may still be lingering on people's records. I'm looking forward to doing that. And also, like I said earlier, expanding Power Moves. We want to eventually get to all the middle schools in the county, and that's going to be at the top of our priority list in terms of expanding and building on what we've already done.
That's wonderful. I love that your thought process is innovative, right?
Well,
And
thank you.
changing how we view the criminal justice system. That's so important. And I think that's what makes you stand out. So thank you for that.
No problem.
So I understand there's accountability court here as well. What is that?
Oh, accountability courts are courts where they're alternative courts for people who may need some help in specific ways, but it's also an alternate to the traditional prosecution. So, for example, mental health court is a type of accountability court. We
Okay.
also have drug court. We also have veterans court here in Henry
Hmm.
County, and so the initiatives that I started, Power Moves and the pretrial diversion programs, are complements to those types of alternative resolutions to traditional prosecution. Because I believe that we should have every tool in the toolbox when it comes to criminal justice, not just be a one trick pony and just lock everybody up. I think it's
Right.
important that we are looking at every case on a case by case basis, making sure we're taking dangerous people out of our community, but also making sure that we are redeeming those who are redeemable.
Right. And that's honorable. Often, our young people ask about how they can interact positively with police officers, with members of law enforcement, anyone that is on the county or government level. What type of advice would you give to a young adult or even someone my age that has misconceptions about what our government does or doesn't do for them and how they can handle any type of interactions with law enforcement?
Well, the first thing is to always realize that police officers have a certain amount of authority, and that authority has to be respected.
Yes.
I would also caution people and just let them know, like, look, first of all, we shouldn't be doing things that are wrong and against the law. That's first. Secondly, if they find themselves in a situation where they don't like how they were treated, if they feel like they were mistreated in any way, there's a way and an avenue to make complaints about that. And it's not on the side of the street.
Right.
Because at that point, you should just listen to the officers, follow directions, and handle that issue in another forum. That's not the forum in which to handle it. Take the ticket, take the citation, make a complaint later if they feel like they need to, and make their arguments in the appropriate forum. But having a back and forth on the street with the police is not usually a winning proposition for the person who has been stopped.
That's right. That's right. Especially if there's any type of wrongdoing. So if someone has experienced something that they felt was unjust, or they didn't feel that they were treated properly, how can they file a complaint? What do you do? Do they call you? What do they do?
They go to the police department first because every police agency has an internal affairs division
Okay.
where complaints are supposed to be lodged.
Right.
And that would be the best first step to go. If
Right.
they feel like a crime has been committed, then they can take the avenues to report that crime just like any other citizen against any other citizen. So I would just say, just always remember that at the end of the day, your job is to get home safely. That officer's job is to get home safely. And we want everybody to be safe and unharmed. And so you want to make sure that you're making your arguments in the appropriate form.
That's correct. So, for those of us in the community that want to support what you're doing and want to assist with our youth, or want to assist in making change, positive change, how can we support you? How can we make change in our community in a positive way?
Well, I think that what we can all do is just make sure that if there are any children in your lives, to make sure that you are talking to them, to make sure that you are helping to educate them on positive things, making sure that you're doing everything to make sure that they stay in school. That's the best help you can do, give us, because what we've seen is kids who don't go to school that tend to drop out. And we know that 80+% of those young people who drop out end up in the criminal justice system.
Wow.
And we all have a part to play in raising our kids and educating them and making sure that when we see people who are out of place, just speaking to our kids, making sure they recognize that we see them, and making sure they understand that we care about them, and doing everything we can to make sure that they're reading every day and that they're going to school and they're staying out of trouble, and that you know who your kids are hanging out with and where they are at all times. That goes a very long way. It sounds basic and simple and easy, but everybody's not doing it. And so I submit that if we're all doing that, taking care of our kids, grandkids, nephews, and nieces, we won't have as many of the problems as we tend to see at times.
Wonderful. Well, we definitely appreciate your time,
Of course.
for you sitting down and explaining your Power Moves initiative and your pretrial diversion program, also giving us words of advice. Thank you all for tuning in to another segment of Game Changers TV.